aren't familiar with them. It's going to be good.
Check, check. Cool. Hello, hello. Yeah, I'm good. We're good to go.
I hear it. Okay.
There you go.
So that's a stick in. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We'll get started right away because I know we're on a bit of a time crunch. Short, my name is M. It's a whole other name, but we can have another conversation on that. I've been working with the corporation for about 2 decades. Half of it has been R&D, and the other half has been in development, actually the other way around, actually. And my current role is the digital reality ecosystem architect. Good morning.
My name's Kyle Daughtry. I've been with Exxon about 16 years, a bunch of different technical and digital roles. Right now I'm the XR and digital twin product manager, so nice to meet y'all. We're here today to talk to you a little bit about what we're calling a digital reality ecosystem and really how we move our company to a more visual way of working. So pay attention to the small letters, not the big letters.
Thank you. All right, we're going to get started. There's a lot of material. You're going to be drinking from the fire hose, but we haven't had an agenda to orient you about what we're talking about, right? Recap, because what the hell, well, excuse me, but what have we been doing, right? What have we been doing? Where are we today and where we're headed? Long story short. Foundations and use cases, so how really we operate. Use cases in action, people in action. So show a few things. We will, for sure, right? Understanding how we pivoted to reality first, and then from there, we don't have it figured out. So there's a call to action, and we're going to end off with a video. So we'll get started right away. Kyle's going to start off with the recap.
All right, so I'm going to start off by just saying, we're not trying to redefine what a digital twin is. There are plenty of definitions of a digital twin. At the end of the day, I think there's like 255 different definitions of a digital twin or variants or whatever you want to call it. But what we did is we said, let's come up with the biggest areas inside of our company that are going to impact us around digital twins. So what are those components? Simulation, integration of data, and visualization. And so each of those areas have a level of maturity inside the company. Lots of work that's happened in the top left-hand corner. Lots of work that's happened in the bottom corner or bottom area. Not as much on the visualization side until we pulled this effort together. Really the goal over a period of time is to try to move as many of our assets to that center area. And that's kind of our goal. So it's not redefine digital twin, it's what is useful and beneficial to the business to make a digital twin effective.
We didn't have all that figured out, right? And that's really the mapping right here that you see. You're not supposed to squint and see all those words, right? But we zoomed out one day, really over the span of a decade of POCs and pilots to really understand where's that data flow? What is that common denominator? What's that problem? And it was our visual assets, right? One-time use. Pay for it, use it, throw it away. And so we had to really bucketize it into 4 buckets. How do you capture that 3D asset? Where do you store it? How do you deliver it or translate it? And how do we consume it and so forth, right? The minute we were able to break those down, we had to, obviously, our mission is a global scale and incorporate digital twins. It's not going to be a single platform. So we had to interview our sites globally. How do you capture that data? Well, I'm using 360 images. I'm using terrestrial scanners, ground scanners, right? Mobile scanners, drones. Okay, cool, metrology scanners. Where are you storing them? Disparate locations, in summary. I've got a land share, I've got an email, I've got a OneNote, there's a website link, I've got a bag of external hard drives, and how do you deliver them? I don't know, we pay some folks, that's all I know, right? And then they give me this file back, but that's all that I know. And what do you lose during that process? And what are you using that 3D asset for? Training, design reviews, probably, emergency prepared response, some other pseudo-digital twin applications. The list goes on, the licenses go on, right? There was a big problem. And that picture right there, ExxonMobil, that's the baby. The spaghettis are data. And hopefully that's familiar to you guys as well, too.
All right, so M got to show the nasty mess. I'm going to show a little bit about what our future state of building an open, interoperable asset digital twin. We'll talk a little bit about how we're pulling together industry folks. We're pulling together peers of ourselves. But the biggest part of this was that really simplistic, break it down into data components into 4 pillars, like Em mentioned. Democratize that capture. So all of you guys have a cell phone in your pocket. Most likely it's an iPhone or something similar, and it can capture a level of fidelity that is actually pretty good for, not for engineering work, but it's actually pretty good for taking measurements or doing quick reviews with folks remotely. So one of the biggest things that we're trying to do is say, hey, how do we actually set standards, guardrails, guidance for people to be able to capture their asset more effectively and easily? Second part, separate software from data. One of the big things that happen inside of our industry is separating hardware from software with OPA, the process automation area. That's still going. It's great. What we saw was how do we actually separate data from software now so I can use that in any particular application at any point in time. Plug and play integration, number 3, pretty straightforward there. Our data shouldn't be held to a particular platform. Our data needs to be able to move between platforms. I need to be able to have a visual asset and tie information from SAP, from Credo, from whatever particular system, inspection system that we have. 4, this is our kind of motto, anytime, anywhere. How do we actually allow people to access, and not just from device, so not just from headset or from phone or tablet or their PC or whatever it is, but also for use cases. So consume many times. Ultimately, the whole goal here is building a digital thread so I understand what, when, where, why, and then I can use that information continuously. Moving to digital reuse versus being stuck in that area where I have hard drives in my in my drawer. Or we actually had one where PDF was delivered to one of the projects, and they said, yeah, we've got our 3D model. It's in a PDF here. And we go, oh, my gosh, we're not even in the same realm right now.
So told you about where we are, right? This is really our roadmap. What we've done previously was really set the foundation. Again, I mentioned we have global sites. A lot of site inefficiencies, right? You're capturing data. You're storing them everywhere. We had to define those guardrails to really understand, right? Utilizing the power of crowdsourcing. What is legacy? What is viable? What are those formats? What's the dimensional accuracy you need? What's the visual fidelity that you need? How are we going to get that from that hardware, right? And who are those service providers so we can set those enabling agreements in place? Once we got that established, really led to, well, what is the next thing to do? Well, let's focus on reality capture, because obviously a majority of our use cases that we're seeing are popping up are reality capture focused. You'll learn a little bit more as we dive down further. We set that foundation. You can see those use cases for yourself. This year, we started working on the other modality. Instead of reality capture, then we started working on the engineering model. From asset level all the way down to component level. That got us into conversations with projects to understand, well, what does that handover look like between projects to operations? How do we prepare that data set so that way it's handed over without being lost in translation? And at the same time, right, let's make sure now we start integrating that data, project maintenance, whatever that we need, risk data, as long as it fits that use case and output it anytime, anywhere, like Kyle said, right? The integration of 1D and 2D data. So if you looked at that Venn diagram, the visualization of data aggregation, that joining is that piece that's coming up. Next year, real-time simulations, operator training simulations, pushing the boundaries of real-time 3D. We're getting back to our roots where we actually first started. We first started real-time 3D for immersive technology, but then we started mapping out, as mentioned, right? And the common denominator that we saw was really inefficient for the corporation was our visual data.
Yeah, just to hit on that a little bit more, we've done a lot of really interesting, really cool things that provided value for 1, 2, 3, 4 sites. And what we had an aha moment one day was we're missing a lot of foundational components to be able to scale to every site and be able to do it effectively. So that is, there's a lot of cool things. Hopefully you'll see in a video towards the end. I'm going to go super fast to do this. So the premise of the components of a digital twin, right? So we said those are those 3 areas. Well, these are our 8 particular areas that we're working on inside the company to be able to actually make that real. So guardrails, we talked about that a little bit. How do we create standards? Services, who do I call? Who do I call for services across the globe? Some folks already have them, some folks don't. How do we create MSAs across the globe? Storage, where do I store our assets? Spoiler alert, that's actually a lot harder, it seems, than you would think it would be. Platforms, what are the right platforms to use for those particular use cases? So whether it's a digital twin or it's a AR in the field application for an operator. Use case enablement, a lot of work we're putting into is what is the ROI? And I love the statement that we're corrupted because we partly corrupted, but over time, really what is the ROI and how do we organize that appropriately? So constantly looking at new solutions and new scenarios, and we'll talk about that in a second. External engagement, we're here. That's what we're doing right now is we're trying to both be influenced by the industry, but also influence the industry. We've got a little bit of time in the space. Collectively, probably 20 some odd years. It's pretty wild to actually think about it. So there's a lot of stuff that we know, but there's also a lot of stuff that we don't know. Workforce enablement, we're actually build out skill families inside the organization for 3D to try to harness that a bit more. There's a really tight balance between that services and the workforce, and that's something that we're trying to figure out over time. Happy to discuss that. I think that's a growing thing to figure out through our industry. How much do I bring inside the company? How much do I actually service externally? And then governance, really the main thing there is how do I actually take an organization that doesn't all report to the same structure and allow things to scale? You've got to have a level of governance across all of it.
So take all that, what Kyle said, right, and flatten it out from the circles become rectangles, and we laid it across because you're like, well, you worked on something last year. What have you done? This is our sanitized version to share with you out there, right? So guardrails, well, like he mentioned, we've established those guardrails for our 3D modalities. On that journey, we started realizing we probably need some guardrails for our ground controls and monuments and things like that as well. Services, site supported, above supported now. So enabling agreements are set from the corporate level, right? So that way the sites can trust that these folks that are being having enabling agreements are adhering to our guardrails. Storage, I'll talk more about it, but we got a place where we need to put what things look like, but then we started realizing, oh, we need a place where things are and when as well. So those are two storages that you can see. Content management system as a geospatial tag database. Platforms, remember many, reduced down to a few. Use cases, the minute you understand moving to a visual of working, when Kyle said those small letters in the beginning when we first started the presentation, the corporation understands that now. The use cases come in out of the woodworks. This is what I do today. These are the inefficiencies, but if I moved myself to a visual way of working, this is how I would do it different. And these are the differentials. Quantify that. And that's your ROI that Kyle's talking about as well. External engagement, we're here, but we've also joined a number of consortiums. As he mentioned, we don't know everything, so we need help, and we've joined folks like the National Center of Simulation and partnered with the DoD in the gaming industry. I heard about some folks talking about that. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. We've been looking into that. Those are our tax dollars at work, and those folks have already been employing those folks as well, so we want to learn from them. Same thing with the Digital Twin Consortium. A lot of great minds in there, and so we wanted to join that. Same thing with ARC4 and so forth. External engagements, he already said it already, right? And governance, there's a life cycle. If we're going to reuse that 3D asset over and over and over, we might output it to XR. We might output it to a web-based client and so forth, right? It could be some of these use cases, but how do you govern that from regretted work? There's got to be some governance established in the background.
All right, I'm going to fly through this super fast. I think we're tight on time. But if I don't know about other owner-operators in the room, but this might look familiar to you. At the end of the day, if you look at a project during design and construction, you'll have 1D, 2D, 3D, and reality capture data. You'll have a model, you'll have all of that, right? And then you'll get to handover. And right now, in the handover process, you'll actually have a gap, because that gap is really governed by what are the things in operations that I have to maintain, both regulatory and from a process standpoint. So you lose that information. At the end of the day, when you get back into actually operating and maintaining it, look what happens to the 3D and the RC again. It comes back. You're doing it again. You're doing the same thing that you did during that project phase, whether it was a greenfield or a brownfield asset. This thing is one of the biggest things that we're trying to focus on, is how do we make that cost and barrier to entry, along with the processes, align to allow that circle to keep on going. So I don't spend money in both locations on the same thing.
Foundation and use cases. You caught up to where we are now. Capture, store, deliver, consume, right? Set the foundation, stop the inefficiencies. We realized was capture, store, and deliver. or foundational efforts for us. A lot of efforts put into that to make sure. And then the consumption channel, output anytime, anywhere, but use cases are going to drive that. We've taken our ExxonMobil technology engineering company DIA process, discover, incubate, and accelerate. Discover that technology. You can kind of see where some of those use cases are. Incubate, so let's test it out, pilot out at a site. Everything checks off. Let's scale that out or accelerate. And again, you can see some of those use cases. For the sake of time, I'll just leave it there. Happy to answer some of those questions, but we'll keep on moving.
So we mentioned it before, split this out into foundation and use cases. There's a lot of things in the data space and a lot of things in simulation space that need to mature. But in the space of visualization, we got two big things to solve. One's a 3D content management system that's independent from platforms, agnostic to storage of models, and allows us to govern our assets to be able to go into digital twin applications or field apps or whatever they are. There's a missing gap there. I'll put that out to the world. Geospatial tag database. Really, at the end of the day, once I actually have a digital twin, I need to be able to tag information in it. I need to be able to associate that back to our source systems. Being able to do that independently and move between applications is a requirement. There's no monolithic stack that's going to solve everything for you. So these two things are big things that we're working on right now. We want to work on it with industry.
Let me spend a little bit of time. Sorry,
yeah, go for it.
When you said that, I was like, so the minute we start storing what things look like, you know what we start seeing? They want to start tagging things like, this is a pump, this is a heat exchanger. Oh, I got a great idea. I want to tie in some other source systems, right, to pull up 1D and 2D data. But we don't want that locked up in a single platform. This is an emerging technology landscape. There will be other digital twin platforms. There will be other applications for your use cases. We want to own that data. That is our oil as well. And we want to be able to create that digital thread and feed that into other applications that meet our data model, hence an ecosystem.
Yeah, and don't get us wrong here. We're working on this space. We already have things in place. The biggest thing is we're trying to come to the industry and say, this needs to be taken on at a bigger level. Don't let us solve one particular problem for an area. Let us come together as an industry and solve it overall.
Amen. Use cases in action. Wait, I think this is your turn.
Rapid fire. Yeah, that'll work. I'll go for it. So really what we're going to show is just a couple of things back and forth. This is one of our assets. Really, the basics of bringing reality into the world allows us to get just site familiarization, very easy navigation from panos to the actual scans of the facilities. So it's super easy to understand. Actually, I'll do this one to get us back on track. 2D overlays. At the end of the day, I can go from just creating reality to now I take the standard drawings that I already have, whether it's a blast zone, water maps, or even just plot plans, right? Bring that into the same environment and same area. Everything that we're talking about is trying to bring context to the individual at the time that they actually need it.
Planning, scoping, design, troubleshooting. You know what all that equates to? It's a whole bunch of measurements. Do you know that used to be a full-time job for us to really go out there and take those measurements at a z-axis? Take a picture of it, get that dimensional accuracy, and do it from your desk or in the digital reality.
Turnaround planning logistics, the simple things of taking models of equipment and putting it into space, understanding where it fits up, and allowing us to do logistics a lot easier for turnarounds. Same thing with temporary piping layout. It doesn't have to be perfect whenever I'm doing planning. I can draw really temporary piping layout just to give planning understanding.
Projects, this is like superpowers, right? What it was designed to be versus what is actually there. Mesh them together. You can actually see if it was in place, when it's going to be there, right? To give you that understanding for things like progress tracking, for example. Inspections.
Really cool thing about this is taking drones and allowing us to capture 3D images, but also using AI to be able to detect things. And whenever I detect things, let me give you more context into the world by throwing an actual dot, red, yellow, green, of whether that inspection is something that you need to look at. Or if it's a hot zone, let me look at all the reds in this particular area. Allowing you to get more context, whether it's missing bolts, insulation damage, corrosion, expansion joints, could be anything, right?
But before that, right, instead of using a visual eye, imagine without AI, you got all those drone shots, and probably somebody's opening up a folder and trying to understand what those images are and where they are. That's what Kyle means by context. I'm going to show you where it is on that asset, so that way that's where the orientation is. And I'm only going to show you things that have anomalies visually. Same thing with internal visual inspections, right? Instead of sending a drone for at heights, send it on the internals as well. This is a catalyst bed example. So you see the trail of where the drone is, the images and so forth, right? But we can even create a model inside if we needed to. But long story short, we're not sending folks in there.
Immersive tech, this is something, we've been working for a while. I think that training part probably should slide a little bit more into the maturity than not. We've been using it for, high consequence scenarios, trying to figure out those spaces that you got to create. You can't recreate in the real world and allow people to actually do it virtually. Design reviews using headsets to collaborate across the world, from Milan to Beaumont to Houston campus, all over the place. Connected workers, same thing, getting headsets into the field, or just tablets to allow people to connect, or construction progress tracking. We like to call this just will the couch fit? Can I actually put this thing in this particular space?
Augmented procedures in the field. I heard somebody talking about this. I think it's pretty straightforward, right? But for us in our world, hundreds of tasks, hundreds of steps, not done frequently. Big room for error. Now, instead of procedure-based, how about digital procedures with animations to guide you step by step, so that way our folks in the field do not get hurt.
All right, so I'm gonna fly through this fast. I don't know where the time is for us. We're good? Okay, cool.
All right.
All right, so one of the biggest things for us here is actually transferring to a vision of reality first, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what we mean by that. So if you look at traditional, go back to that little circle that talked about the design and construct, and you've got a CAD model, you've also got engineering tools that feed in engineering information, but in most cases, that CAD is just a source of information, so you're feeding in engineering information into it, and then once you go to operations and maintenance, you pull it back out into other systems. Well, if you kind of looked at what an ERP, hopefully this is typical for like y'all's ERP systems, everybody else. You actually go from this to this. So this is what you know about inside of it. This to this.
See that? It's the same thing, but
Boom,
you're missing a whole bunch of other information.
So really, at the end of the day, there's a couple of things that are going on there. There's a process problem, but there's also just a technology problem in between. This is actually a scan down to 1/4 of an inch of that same location. So I already get more context. I got context just because I know where things are at. Even compared to this, I know where things are at. And as soon as you layer in data and information on top of that, whether that's pulling the CAD model into reality and getting all the information about all the engineering information, or tagging a new thing. If I have an asset that doesn't actually have any CAD behind it, it becomes powerful. And that's been the biggest transformation for us.
Take a picture of it. That's really the concept. It's just with an extra dimension. But think about that trust level. When we interviewed our sites, again, global scale. I have my CAD model, but it's expensive to update. I still don't see reality. I still go walk out in the field. But what happens in your consumer lives? You're checking Google Earth. You're probably using Street View. You're getting live information to trust that data, like things like what things are, where things are, and when. That's a lot more trustworthy, right? And in terms of location, we're trying to fine-tune that as well, all the way from parcel level to our boundaries and things like that, right? Down to probably a screw down here exactly, about 7 decimal places. There's a lot of use cases for us where we'd like to be able to really provide location services for our field operators, and that's something that we're going to accelerate next year. This is reality. It's just plain and simple. This is what our operators trust. It's a picture. It's something you can identify with as close as you can to reality. We're not saying CAD models are gone. We're not saying they're not valuable, right? But we are saying we have shifted to reality first. Because of that, one of the major factors is that trust. I mean, look at that picture. Look at all the details that you have, that you need.
All right, call to action piece. We really break it into those 4 pillars. One of them, capture. Need industry standards. I think there are already some great ones out there, but there's some that haven't matured, and we're trying to push those forward. We need to understand new ways to capture things faster so our MOC processes are efficient. I think that's one of the big things where we see NERF and all the other wonderful technology coming out there. Might not be engineering grade, but it actually is something that's useful to get visuals. Storage, we already talked about it. We need a 3D content management system, and we need an open and interoperable geospatial tag database.
That's on me now, huh? Delivery, segmentation of reality capture. We told you we chose reality first. But if you think about reality first, there's some things that we need help on, segmentation specifically. So, for example, if I took a laser scan of this chair, I'm getting X, Y, Z's on a table, and then maps out into a picture. But if I click on it, how do I click that entire X, Y, Z's really consists of this is a chair? I need that to be completely segmented in my point cloud data. I don't want to have to do it by hand. We're looking for an automated way for that with an 80% confidence rate or higher.
We're wild.
Yeah, maybe you got to sprinkle a little bit of time in that equation, but that's one of the reasons why we're out here, right? Same thing with classification. I want to have to tag it myself, but I know that this is a chair. I know this is a pump. I know this is a heat exchanger, a flange, and so forth. We need that to be automated. Platforms, I already talked about it. There's plenty of platforms out there. There will be more. We're always on the lookout. We have an ecosystem that will continue to stay open and evolve.
The last part that we wanted to get through before we throw a video up, if we can, hopefully we got enough time for that, is there's other efforts that are going on in the world. This is one particular one we're joined into a part of called the Digital Twin Consortium. They have a periodic table that already defines everything from data services to integration to intelligence to UX. You name it across the spectrum of what a digital twin is. And so it's great to be able to collaborate. We actually started a working group inside there for visual and spatial data. And that's one of the things that we're trying to work with them together on.
If you take your phones out, that's actually how you contact us, because unfortunately our emails are always full. It's our LinkedIn profile, but there's no quota for us over there. Happy to connect with you on there. And folks, if you remember anything, we're going to show you a video, but ExxonMobil has moved to a visual way of working. Thank you. AV folks, please play that video for us.
Thank y'all. So I just click it.
From laser scanning to virtual reality, 3D models and other digital data captures are quickly becoming must-have technologies in our industry. Globally, ExxonMobil has spent tremendous resources on independent 3D efforts, from capture to creation, and even purchased visual assets. These 3D models help us gain better insights, make informed decisions, visualize disparate data, and streamline innovation. However, many of our 3D assets are stored in various locations and used locally when they could be leveraged across ExxonMobil facilities. As part of a company-wide initiative, we're establishing a digital reality ecosystem, which will serve as a foundation for our 3D visual assets platform. This ecosystem will help us capture 3D models in formats that everyone can use, centralize where they are stored, and automate the way they are delivered, so they can be used by anyone, at any time, from anywhere. This ecosystem will allow us to move toward a more visual way of working with contextualized data, which will be essential to our success for corporate scale and integration, now and in the future.
Thanks, folks. I don't know if we have enough time for
Yeah, thank
questions,
y'all.
but Jeff, you let us know.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.